Hey there, this is Steve. I'm going to try and do something quick for this week. My church didn't actually have me preach this week, so I'm not supposed to preach. But I really wanted to say something, so I'm just going to put it out there, and people who want to listen are welcome to listen. Look, it's kind of dusky today. It'll get darker. Okay, so I want to read from Mark chapter 11. We're going to start with Mark. We're talking about Jesus again, because that's what we do here. Mark 11, hard to see, starting at verse 15. Okay. Then they came to Jerusalem. Who is they? Jesus and his disciples. This is just after he had done the triumphal entry, and they had all come in, and Jesus had come in, looked around the temple area, cursed a fig tree, and then the next day he and his disciples are coming back into Jerusalem. Everyone's a little bit nervous, and then they came into Jerusalem, and he entered the temple and began to drive out those who were buying and selling in the temple, and overturned the tables, the money changers, and the seats of those who were selling doves. And he would not permit anyone to carry merchandise through the temple. And he began to teach and to say to them, "Is it not written, my house will be called a house of prayer for all the nations, but you have made it a robber's den?" The chief priests and the scribes heard this and began seeking how to destroy him, for they were afraid of him, for the whole crowd was astonished at his teaching. And the reason that the priests, the main priests, are up against Jesus now is because now he's on their territory. He's in the temple, the area that they are in charge of. And as far as they're concerned, he's making a disruption of it. He's completely disordered. It's interesting. I've been having a discussion with somebody this week on social media about whether God or Jesus is a God of order. And I would argue from passages like this that Jesus is actually about disorder, because he has to break the order of the world in order to create the proper order of love and order of peace. Hey, look, I've got headphones around my neck. I'll take that off. Okay, so here we got Jesus. He's taking out the money changers, and most people are saying, this just shows that business and church just don't mix. You shouldn't have business in the church. You need to worship God and focus on that. And I'd say that's not what Jesus is talking about. The thing is that it has to do with the particular place where Jesus is at, and he's driving these money changers out from. The place, the thing is that the temple has got different sections. The very center of the temple, you've got the Holy of Holies, the place that only the high priest can go in. And then around that, you have the holy place. And the holy place is where all citizens of Israel can go, which means circumcised men. Only men can go into the holy place, and they can pray in there. However, there is a place in the temple set aside for women, and it is called the court of women, or sometimes it's called the court of the Gentiles. And the reason it's called those places is because that's the place for women and what they call proselytes, or people who are a part of the nation of Judea but aren't full Jews, because either they haven't been circumcised or they weren't born a Jew. And so they can go and worship in that area. They can do politics in that area. They can participate in Judea in that area. Well, that's the area that the money changers were in. What was going on is the high priest said, well, we need money changers. It is actually kind of a thing. Let me tell you why money changers were actually important. Because what would happen is people, the way that it's supposed to go is you're supposed to bring livestock from your home. It could be a dove or it could be an ox, but you're supposed to take it from your home, bring it to the temple, and have it sacrificed at the temple. Well, what if you live really, really far away? At this time of the temple, there were people as far away as Rome and Babylon and Egypt, and they were coming from all over the place. And are they going to bring their livestock all that way? No, not going to do that. So what they would do is they would bring money, so that way they could bring they could buy livestock and all that. The problem is that they can't bring just any money. Lots of money had pictures of gods on it. Well, you can't have money with a picture of a god in the temple. That's not acceptable. That's basically like bringing an idol into the temple. That you can't do. So what they would do is they would bring their money to a money changer, and the money changer would change their coins from whatever coinage they had, and they would give them special temple money. It's only money that can be used in the temple. It can't be used anywhere else. And so they would have special temple money, and which would have no idols and be totally appropriate to use in the temple. They would exchange that money, and then they would walk over to a cart nearby, and then they would get the animals, the doves or the ox or whatever it is that they could afford. They would buy it there, and then bring it into the holy place and have it sacrificed there. That's how it worked. But the thing is that this is a big system. It requires a lot of room. And the high priest said, well, we don't have a lot of room. Jerusalem is kind of a packed place. Where are we going to put this? So they say, oh, I know. We'll just put it in the court of the women and Gentiles. We'll just put it there because no big deal. It's only women and Gentiles. Who cares? Well, I think that there were a lot of people that didn't care, and they thought that it was perfectly okay, but Jesus cared. He cared a lot. He came in and saw that the only place in all the world, according to the teachings of the Jews, that you can connect with God, the only place that a woman or an immigrant, a person who is coming into Judea from the outside, can worship God, can connect with God, and to enact political action is now being covered by business, is now being covered by people who are exchanging money, and it's all filled with animals. And it was approved by the high priest. The high priest said, yeah, no, let's go ahead and do this. Well, this is why Jesus did it. He is saying, you business people are coming in and pushing people out. The fact is, this is the appropriate place for women and immigrants to go. This is the place where they need to be. And you have now pushed them out and given them no place to be in front of God, no place to be before other fellow Jews to talk about the issues that are necessary. And so they don't have any place in it anymore because you took it out. So Jesus kicked them all out. And this is why he says, is it not written, my house will be called a house of prayer for all the nations? Nations in Greek is the same word as Gentiles. And so Jesus is saying, this is the place for immigrants. And you have pushed them out. This is their place, and you have pushed them out. This is the place for women, and you have pushed them out. And this is actually a big theme in what Jesus said. Jesus is very much about making sure that the people of God have a place for women and have a place for immigrants. We talked before, last week before, I don't remember, about how, about what the Bible says about immigrants. It was last week, yeah. About what the Bible says about immigrants and how the entire Bible is in agreement that the place for immigrants is to be with the people of God. The people of God need to be with immigrants. And then Jesus makes a special note that the people of God include of Mary and Martha, which is in Luke chapter 10. And Martha's in the kitchen. She's really busy. She's not going to make sure that everybody has food and all that. But Mary, her sister, is sitting out there, lazing about, learning with Jesus, taking the place of a disciple. And Martha is like, that is not Mary's place. Mary's place is not to take the place of a disciple. Mary's place is in the kitchen helping me because I got too much work to do. And Jesus says, no, actually, Martha, Mary's place is here. Mary's place is to be a disciple. And I don't have a problem with you doing the kitchen and all that, but don't tell her what she should be doing, because it's not her place to be in the kitchen. The kitchen is not her place. The kitchen is not the place for a woman. No matter what anybody tells you, according to Jesus, the kitchen is not the place for a woman. A kitchen is a place for working and all that, whether man or woman. But the place for a woman is as a disciple, as a follower of Jesus, just with all the men. The woman's place is to be beside men, to be equal with them, to be counted as equal with other men. That's a woman's place. The woman's place, Jesus said, is not to be set aside just by a bunch of people who want to do business. That Jesus says that a woman needs her place. And nobody should be kicking women out of their place. If Jesus were here today, and Jesus decided that he was going to, he was going to do some cleansing of some temples. The fact is that the first place that Jesus would go is he would go to churches. He would go to churches and he would look at the pulpit and push the man out of the way and say, the woman's place is here to teach. How do I know that? Well, because Jesus set it up so that way the very first evangelist was a woman. The very first person who saw him risen from the dead was a woman who couldn't testify in court in the Jewish day, a woman who is a woman whose testimony was maybe kind of sketchy because at one point that she was possessed by 7 devils. But that's the person who Jesus chose to be the first evangelist, to be the first person to announce that Jesus was risen from the dead, to be the first person to proclaim that that Jesus was a thing. And he established a woman as being the first person to speak the full kingdom of God apart from himself. So the woman's place is to be a teacher. And any church that does not allow a woman to be a teacher, they need to be kicked out of their place. They need to be cleansed from the temple. They need to be thrown out. There needs to be some tables thrown around in that church. Some pews need to be tossed up in the air. In any church that does not have a woman teaching, because they say a woman's place is not in the pulpit. A woman's place is to train us about equality, is to train us about how to love. That's a woman's place. And us men, there are plenty of times that our place, our correct place is to sit down at the foot of a woman and say, you teach me, you train me, you tell me how it is that I'm supposed to live, because I'm still figuring this out. A woman's place is not in submission to her husband. I know you can point out Bible verses to me and say that that's the place, that's what it's supposed to be. Of course, it also says the saying that a husband is supposed to be submissive to his wife, and that they're all supposed to be submissive to each other. So if the only thing that anybody says is a wife needs to be submissive to her husband, then you've got it wrong, because it's not supposed to be submission. A woman's place is in partnership with her husband, not in submission. It's supposed to be mutual submission. And if any husband is not submitting to his wife, then her place is not submission. It's got to be mutual or not at all. But frankly, Jesus wasn't all about marriage. He told his disciples, including the female disciples, that marriage isn't the best thing. A woman's place, according to Jesus, is without an oppressor for a husband. A woman's place is often not to have a husband at all, not to have somebody telling her what to do. According to Jesus, a woman's place is not to be locked down by a husband. Now, he also said that if a woman or a man or anybody else wanted to get married, if there's mutual agreement that two people want to get married and they want to do that, he says, fine. That's fine. It's no problem. It's not the best, but it's fine. It works out well. You know, we can work with that. The thing is that right now, I believe that we can see this week, I've been looking at the news, and when I see Jesus this week, the main place where I see Jesus is in the place of women who are speaking to power about injustice, where they are saying, why are you voting this way when you are abusing women who have been sexually harassed or sexually abused? Why are you voting this way? They need to be in the Supreme Court and saying, why are you voting this way? What is it that you're doing? Why are you allowing women to continue to be oppressed? That's women's place, according to Jesus. A woman's place is to speak out against injustice. A woman's place is in the Senate. A woman's place is in the Supreme Court. And any place that won't allow them to speak, any place that will not allow them, there are tables that need to be turned. It's the same thing with immigrants. Remember that Jesus went to the place where women and immigrants are supposed to be. And he turned the tables for both the immigrants and the women. And he is saying that an immigrant's place is not a jail cell. Because the whole thrust of the Bible is an immigrant's place is to have security. An immigrant's place is to be in this country. An immigrant's place is to have peace and to have their needs met. To have protection because they've gone through so much already. An immigrant's place is to receive help. And also, an immigrant's place is to speak out against injustice, because an immigrant, often more than anybody else, a refugee, understands what justice is, and they understand what peace is. They understand what that need is and what that looks like, even if they've had very little bit in their lives. And you know what our place is, us white men? Our place is to listen. Just like Jesus told the men in power, you need to stand back and you need to listen. You need to stop taking the place of these other folks. You need to stand back and you need to listen. Even so, Jesus is saying to us white men today, your place is to stand back and to listen. Your place is to listen to the immigrants and listen to the women and have them tell us what it is that they've needed all these years that we hadn't heard up to this point. We need to stop and we need to listen and let them have a chance to speak. And I think that that's really what's going on at the turning of the tables. Jesus is enacting a protest. He's protesting in order that women would be listened to and immigrants would be listened to. That's the main thing. And I think that we have the whole teaching of Jesus and the whole thrust of Jesus is saying that. And you may disagree, and that's fine. And you'd be wrong, and I'd be okay with that. All right. May the Lord bless you and keep you and give you